If everybody could get a seat, please, then we can start with the side event.
Well, welcome everyone. So nice to see you all here, and thank you so much for being here. My name is Kiki. I'm the Dutch United Nations Youth Representative on Sustainable Development, and I'm your moderator for today together with Sarah.
Hello, I'm Sarah, and I'm also the United Nations Youth Representative on Sustainable Development from the Netherlands. And yeah, that's actually it, and I will leave it to Kiki now.
Well, today we're going to discuss a very important topic. It's on Youth4Adaptation, an intergenerational approach to creating a climate-resilient world. And we have a full agenda for today. So we're going to start with some opening remarks, then some very inspirational speakers. And after that, for the second half an hour, we will do a consultation because we're also very excited to hear your opinions and your ideas on this topic. So I first want to ask Jamie if you want to start with an opening remark. Jamie is from the Youth4 Adaptation Working Group.
Yeah, thanks, Kiki and Sarah. Excited to be here today. So, yeah, hi, my name is Jamie Cummings. I'm a vulnerability project manager with Re-Energize Disaster Risk Reduction and Resiliency Project. And I also serve as the climate change contact point for the Stakeholder Engagement Mechanism, or SEM. The Sendai Stakeholder Engagement Mechanism is a group of stakeholders in participation with UNDRR, advocating for recognition and implementation of disaster risk reduction in the UN system, including in the climate action spaces. So today I want to start by sharing an experience that I had this Thursday. I was inspired after attending the first ever Youth Stocktake event. The room was full with no standing room. Young people from around the world spoke directly to COP28 presidency team, including Sultan Ahmed Al Jaber. They did not back down. In Youngo's very first statement, they addressed Al Jaber's direct ties to the fossil fuel industry and what this could mean for the integrity of the COP. Furthermore, these young people pressed national delegations to engage with youth beyond tokenism, expressing, for example, that often it's easier to meet with one's national delegation here at a global climate conference rather than at home. You can see the issue. But youth are still knocking on doors at the forefront, especially my colleagues in Adaptation. So today we have new text from the Global Goal on Adaptation, or the GGA, and I want to highlight some positives that came out from this draft, but also stress that there is still work to be done. So I'll frame my time on adaptation in the context of both youth stakeholders and disaster risk reduction, and then get to the highlights, because both are key factors in the success of the global goal on adaptation. A couple nights ago, a colleague asked me the difference between disaster risk reduction, DRR, and adaptation. Although this is the focal area of my work, I struggled to find an eloquent answer. And that's because disaster risk is inextricably linked to climate change, including adaptation. As hazards increase in frequency and severity, communities and nations require an increase in preparedness, early warning systems, and a particular focus on vulnerable populations. One of the vulnerable groups is children and youth. In 2021, UNICEF released the Children's Climate Risk Index, which provides the first comprehensive overview of exposure to vulnerability on the impacts of climate change from a child's perspective. The report is a key contribution towards increasing understanding the impact of climate change that it has specifically on young people and the actions that require to increase the children's adaptive capacity and resilience, all of which are targets of the GGA. So from the new text, I'd like to highlight a couple of points. 1, consultation and collaboration with youth organizations at all levels, including local, national, and international, can ensure the input and feedback are incorporated from the beginning from youth. The text underscores the critical importance of, quote, inclusive of a range of non-party stakeholders, and they directly use the word youth, and it hopes to enhance intergenerational equality. 2, the draft text acknowledges, quote, the stewardship of Indigenous peoples and local communities in relation to living in harmony with nature. This is building upon traditional knowledge, wisdom, and values, respecting their rights, and recognizing their leadership. Locally led adaptation is something that both youth and DRR focused people in the adaptation folks are advocating for. These are positive steps coming out of the text. However, if they're not properly implemented by the national governments, then they have the potential to fall flat as empty words and platitudes. Furthermore, they should not come at the cost of other agenda items, such as the mitigation work program. It's up to national and regional governments to make good on this text, and it's on us as civil society to not let up on the pressure for them to do so. So friends, this is a call to action. Let's continue to work and ensure the GGA framework is fully adopted and operationalized at COP28 in the DRR and youth context. But none of us can face this immense task alone. Youth need capacity and resource support from the climate community, and the climate community needs the boundless energy, passion, and fresh perspectives from youth. It is within our collective power to write a new story, a story of resilience, adaptation, and a sustainable future. So I'll turn it over to the rest of the panel to continue this important discussion. Thanks for your time, and keep up the good fight.
Thank you, Jamie, so much for your very inspiring words, and I hope you all take notes. And yeah, thank you so much. For now, we will go on to the next part of the event, or the next opening remark, sorry. It's a video because the future generational Commissioner of Wales is going to give an opening remark. Unfortunately, he was not able to be here today. But we have his message in the video, and I would like to say that it's quite windy, so maybe it's needed to read the subtitles.
Hello, I'm Derek Walker. I'm the Future Generations Commissioner for Wales, and I'm here in beautiful windy Wales at the Community Energy Farm, I'm delighted to speak to you about what we're doing in Wales. We have the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, which applies to local authorities, public bodies in Wales, and it encourages us to think about the long term, to think about the interests of future generations, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, when we're acting today. So we're already seeing some really big changes in terms of transport, health and education, and we do that by thinking about the Sustainable Development Principle, and we apply that through the 5 ways of working, which is about prevention, long-term thinking, collaboration between public
Well, unironically, it was windy, but hopefully you all, you all were able to read the subtitles. He was talking about how in Wales they take future generations into account while making policy, and today we're going to talk about that principle. I need to click here. On the topic of adaptation. So we have 4 very inspirational speakers today. We have Marco, Yuri, also Fatou in the she's over there. Thank you so much. And Natalia, and they're also all going to talk about their backgrounds and their ideas on this topic. So I first want to introduce Natalia, the co-founder and president of the Costa Rican Youth and Climate Change Network Association. So Natalia, I would like to give you the floor.
Yes, thank you so much for the space. I'm Natalia Gomez. I'm from Costa Rica. Actually, currently, I am not the president of the Costa Rican Youth and Climate Change Network, but I was the president during the last 3 years during the co-funding process. It was a really, on that experience, I got many a really connection with the challenges, with the many experiences, and also to work with different stakeholders at Costa Rica. And also currently I am part of the Youth Advisory Panel of the Global Center for Adaptation and the Special Advisor on Youth of the International Partnerships Commissioner of the European Commission. So it's really a pleasure to be here today with all of you. I wanted to emphasize some experiences I have gotten. I also work as a consultant in climate change adaptation planning. So I supported the process of the development of the National Adaptation Plan in Costa Rica, where we were able to include young voices during the processes, not only during the consultation processes in the last part, but also during the prioritization. So in this point, the National Adaptation Plan comes from the policy, the National Adaptation Policy from Costa Rica. And we use all the inputs we had from many workshops that were done years ago. Well, 2 years ago or something like that for the policy. And after that, we started the National Adaptation Plan 2022, which is in the time frame from 2022 to 2026. And in this context, we had some workshops with experts in different sectors, such as forestry, oceans, marine ecosystems, where also the young people participated. And we had a really close connection with the Youth Vice Ministry. But here I would like to highlight also the role of UNICEF, for example, and UN NGC, that also push the youth participation during the process. So I would like to I would like that other countries in Latin America areas and also worldwide include youth, because youth during this process, they were like always saying everything they think, and also without fear, of course, and also looking for ways to go for more ambitious goals different actions based on their own experiences and own perspectives and backgrounds. So it was a really the input from youth were really appreciated and also included during the process. I would also like to highlight from best recommendations related to the process, and some of them are that we have to do or to try to do these efforts sustainable in times, because sometimes the efforts or youth participation is just for one moment and it is no, and the connections don't continue during the time. And also we advocate in Costa Rica for the participation of young people, not only in the design, but also during the execution of the Youth Adaptation Plan or of the National Adaptation Plan, and also during the monitoring process. The other recommendation or key recommendation is to replicate best practices highlighting the importance to creating the capacities in young people, because sometimes during this process we also found that climate adaptation is not like a really not all the people really understand what does it means and how we can influence that. So always continue with the capacity building is really important, even if there are some people that say, well, we are just talking, we are just doing workshops and we don't see actions on the ground. But for us, it was really important that all the young people know what is really climate adaptation, and the other was to exchange. Because also we, in my role, such as in climate adaptation planning, we are also working at local level. We support 20 local governments to create or to develop their local climate adaptation plans. There were some governments with such amazing themes and such amazing positions, but we wanted to exchange their experiences because not all the governments have the same capacities, for example. Finally, also, I would like to ask to mention some efforts from the Global Center for Adaptation, which are the Youth Adaptation Network, and all of you can also join. We are developing youth adaptation forums. Actually, some weeks ago, we had the Youth Adaptation Forum for the Americas and the Caribbean area. And also, we are working in some small reports of the state and trends in adaptation report of the Global Center for Adaptation. We are translating it into a vocabulary or into a way that all young people can understand it. That's all for my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Natalia, for your sharing your lessons learned and your ideas and stuff. And now I want to ask the audience if you have some questions for Natalia. Does someone have a question? No? Yeah, it's also possible to ask a question later on, so keep that in mind. And now we'll go to Fatou Yang, and she is over there. Are you comfortable with coming to the front? Yeah. Thank you so much. Fatou is in the Youth Advisory Group on Climate Change, and she's with Plan for Planet. And she's also going to talk for 5 minutes, and you all are able to ask questions afterwards. So I want to give the floor to you, Fatou.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that. Good morning, everyone. So I am also here with... is it what? All right. It's all, yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'm here with the youngest SV delegate. So I think it's really important we always consider young people and future generation in all the conversations we have, especially in our national adaptation planning and the implementation of these actions. That is why it's always important we have conversations like this, because it serves as a reminder to our leaders and our policymakers about the need for the inclusion of young people as not only vulnerable groups, but important stakeholders in the implementation of our climate planning. So just to share my reflection about a recent research that we did under the UNFPA in lead up to COP27. We were more or less analyzing the NDC and the inclusion of young people and vulnerable groups in our national adaptation and national climate policies. And it's really unfortunate to see that most of the countries that I've actually reviewed in Africa actually only have young people in our NDCs as vulnerable groups. Like, they recognize young people that, yeah, we're vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. But when it came to the issue of the implementation of the actions that we had, young people were not mentioned as critical or important stakeholders in the implementation of these actions. So this is a wake-up call for us as young people to ensure that we are not only seen as vulnerable, but we play a critical role and an important role as far as the conversations, the actions, and the implementation of these projects are concerned. So that will also bring me to sharing best practices of young people that have been involved in the implementation of climate adaptation projects. In Africa, we see young people, especially organizations that are very important and very critical in our communities because they complement the work that governments do as far as our climate policies are concerned. So, for instance, my organization, that is Clean Earth Gambia, we have been in the forefront in terms of the implementation of climate policies. Of recent, we have worked with institutions like UNICEF, UNFPA, among others, in ensuring that there is more inclusion of young people in the decision-making processes as well as the implementation of our climate adaptation strategies and actions. We have been able to organize several youth forums and consultations to ensure that there is a continuous need for the vulnerable communities and most impacted and marginalized communities continue to have their voices incorporated and included in whatever we do as far as moving and pushing the climate agenda is concerned. Also, in other African countries, we have seen the likes of GAIO, that is Green Africa Youth Organization, that have been also in the forefront in Ghana, leading climate adaptation efforts. Even the last Africa Climate Week, we've seen how young people have been able to mobilize to ensure that we push forward our common agenda. At the UN Advisory Group, obviously, pushing forward the agenda of young people is our priority because that is why we're there as youth advisors to the UN Secretary General. So when we've started our role since March, we've been able to do several consultations with different youth groups, including Yongo, etc., to ensure that we see how we could collaborate and work together in moving forward the common agenda. Because I've realized that it's really important as youth and youth groups to collaborate more because that has also been lacking in ensuring that we are moving forward the common agenda that we have in place. So the more consultations we have as young people, the better for us because it helps us be able to cooperate and also synergize our efforts at the global level in moving forward whatever that we have to move to as well with our leaders as well as other relevant stakeholders. So to other youth groups that are here, if we have not really reached out to you, because we have not been able to reach out to all the groups, we've just been in office for the past 2 months. So if you have some really important issues you would like to share with the UN Advisory Group, the Youth Advisory Group, and you think we could really work together, please reach out to us and we could see how we could always work together because this is really important for us and the work that we do. So obviously that's, so if you see, he has the Plan for the Planet t-shirt, representing Plan for the Planet. So at Plan for the Planet, obviously, one of the biggest youth climate movements, moving also the youth adaptation agenda is also very crucial for us. That is why over the years we've been able to organize over hundreds of youth academies around the world, and we have over 90,000 ambassadors worldwide, where we continue to build the capacities of young people to ensure that they take the space that we need to as far as influencing decisions and projects and policies are concerned. So I'll stop here. I think I have only 5 minutes, and if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to respond.
Thank you so much, Fatou, for the very inspiring words and for sharing your best practices and for bringing along the youngest panel member of today. So, are there any questions for Fatou? Oh, yeah. There's a microphone over there.
Thank you for the wonderful speech, and really lovely to see this young guy here and who is not aware what we are talking about, but will be aware in few years that the future is going to see is not going to be a good. But I just have one question for you, which is also come from my personal experience working with youth. And one of the recommendation that I found out, like when we worked with the youth in Kenya, they were talking about like right now we are seeing that there is a youth engagement as a stakeholder happening at the ground. I'm not saying the work is done, but when it comes to participatory budgeting, financing part of youth are still missed out. And based on your experience with the UNST Youth Advisory Group, how do you think that this can be moved forward when youth are not only considered as a stakeholder, but they're also involved in the participatory community engagement program? And I think it's very important because most of the time, many people do not know where the money comes from and how is it going and how is it mobilizing. So I think youth has a very useful role to play in this transition. So do you have like this agenda in your mind? Like, is it going forward, or how do we see in future, like regarding the participatory budgeting?
Yes.
My opinion.
Yeah, that's really right. In with regards to the issue of participatory budgeting, especially the inclusion of young people in budgeting, I think that's something that we're all aware that it has really been completely lacking, especially in the global south or developing countries. Because even at Yongo, and I believe in every youth group, this is something that we have been always pushing for, to ensure that not only young people are included in the budgetary planning, but also ensuring that young people and locally led adaptation organizations or locally led organizations actually get the necessary funding from the government and other stakeholders to be able to implement projects. There are a lot of amazing projects and initiatives that young people have around the world, but the reason why they are not able to implement some of these projects is because of the lack of funding or the avenue to get the funding needed to be able to implement this. So obviously, because we have been in that particular situation and we understand how it feels, because it really affects us as young people, because it more or less sort of like stuck us in a way to be able to push forward, especially all the amazing initiatives and projects that we have for our communities. So yes, when we had our meeting with the UN Secretary General, obviously these were things that we obviously pushed with him, especially on the issue of the funding for young people and youth organizations to be able to ensure that they continue to implement the projects that they have, but also in terms of in addition to that, to see that more young people are included in national delegations and funded to attend climate discussions and climate decision-making processes, including the COP20, the COPs, annual COPs, as well as the SBs. So I think if we start conversations from here, and as young people using our role and the positions that we have, it could go a long way in also reminding our leaders that they already know that young people do not have this finances, young people do not have this avenue, but the continuous reminders that we make or do for our leaders in regards to these issues are really important, because at the end of the day, it will help us get to where we're supposed to get as far as the issue of funding is concerned. So yes, the issue of the participation of young people and budgetary planning is quite key, and this is something that at the UN Youth Advisory Group, we're trying to push to ensure that there is more young people in decision making of the budgeting and the planning of our national. Yes.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we don't have time for another question, so maybe at the end of the event, you're all able to ask Fatou other very inspiring things and lessons learned. Now we want to go to the next speaker. It's Yuri de Komen. He's a board member of the Dutch Climate Coalition. So I want to give you the floor, Yuri.
Yes, thank you, Kiki. I would first like to say good morning, and then it's also really hard to keep your composure after such an engaging speaker and an even more engaging companion. So it was really nice to hear from both of you. But yeah, of course, I'm really happy to be here and to be able to discuss with you the topics at hand today. To give a short introduction, my name is Yuri. I'm 26 years old. I'm from the Netherlands, and I represent here the Dutch Youth Climate Coalition. So we are a youth organization in the Netherlands. We are centered around building coalitions between other youth organizations in the Netherlands. And we engage based on what we consult with them, what we create as a coalition with politicians, both at the national and EU level. So we have united the voices of 60 youth organizations in the Netherlands, public sector, private sector, student backgrounds, but also political backgrounds, to be able to show that sustainability is not a political issue. It's really an issue for us all, for all people in general, but of course also for our youth. So how do we do this? We do this by engaging with young people, with young experts, in climate dialogues, and in these climate dialogues we focus on specific themes within, say, this sustainability transition. So say food, transport or mobility, or the economy in general. And the question that we asked them is, what do you want your life, what do you want your future, your society in 2040 to look like? And well, we end up with a combined voice of youth, and we combine them in a youth climate agenda. And this is, well, a 50, 60 pager on all these different kind of themes. And at the risk of turning this talk into a 15-minute instead of a 5-minute talk, I will leave the document here, and you can also find it online if you're interested. So at that, with a view of what society in 2040 could look like, we need to translate this vision into policy. And that, of course, isn't easy. If it was easy, we wouldn't be here. The election cycle in the Netherlands also is, at best, 4 years. And the political news cycle, yeah, sorry. I couldn't stand to make the joke. But, of course, the news cycle and the attention span of people is even much shorter. So the central question then becomes, how do we achieve these goals on mitigation, on adaptation, while ensuring that this is also a just transition for people in the Netherlands, for people outside of the Netherlands, and for people who are simply not yet born, a term we usually use, future generations. So underpinned by the core principles of this youth vision and this long document are systems change, long-term thinking, and intergenerational justice. And we proposed a method to enshrine these principles, and we call that the intergenerational equity assessment. So in the run-up to the general elections in 2021, we strongly advocated for this measure to be introduced and to be included in the coalition agreement. And with success, because it ended up being included in the coalition agreement. And afterwards, well, up till now, and we will continue to do this, we are working together with, amongst others, the Dutch Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Policy, in order to further develop this method, because it's ever changing. We're always learning. There are more themes to discover. We need to learn how to do this long-term thinking, how to take into account the needs of future generations. But of course, we have a current state of this process, so it is a continual process where we explore with policymakers the potential effects for different generations, so both current and future generations, for different time spans, so short-term and long-term, and also different themes such as are in our youth climate agenda. So general sustainability, availability and usage of natural resources, housing, public health. So it's not a one-issue thing. Of course, our society, it's very broad. There are always different stakeholders, different themes to take into account. And we really do not want this to become a youth assessment or a youth test. It's really about intergenerational equity, and this long-term thinking also about what could impact future generations. So central to this process, of course, is youth participation and youth engagement. So we really believe that this is, it's a dialogue between youth and policymakers, because policymakers can't do it alone. Future generations and long-term thinking is simply not enshrined into policymaking. So I think it's our job as youth advocates to also be there and try to get these perspectives into the policy-making process. So I think that's all for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Yuri, for sharing your experience and stuff on the intergenerational test on climate change and youth participation. Does anyone want to ask Yuri a question? If you don't, I may have a question. Oh, I see 2 fingers. Yeah, Axel, do you want to ask a question? There's a microphone, yeah.
Wonderful. So again, thanks. And you said that to compile that document, you consulted a wide variety of youth to hear about their visions and priorities. How did you, in practice, make sure that that consultation reached out to as wide a representation of youth in the Netherlands as possible?
That's a great question because it's always also a great challenge. So we do this by two methods. So first of all, we try to have as a diverse and inclusive group of youth organizations that are also able to support our vision. Because as you're probably thinking, if you don't have this as an inclusive process, then you'll never have an inclusive vision. So we do that both through our youth organizations that we engage with, but it also brings an individual youth outreach process. So our organization is really built on this coalition thinking because we want to have a strong message. But we also recognize that some youth are less organized, and then we also need to engage more with them individually. So it's a two-way process, and it's always a challenge. I mean, I'm not going to pretend that it's perfect. So I think that's also very important.
Thank you. There's room for one more question. So you wanted to ask a question. There you
Thanks.
go.
I think it's pretty much connected to your answer now. But let's say at the further stage when youth organizations and manage to be organized, then can you tell us a bit more? Also, maybe mentioning the publications you made. How do you practically engage with policymakers to further push for your ideas, the outcomes of your consultations, and in general about what you would like to see in your country, specifically in the Netherlands? And I think this could be very useful for many other people at this table in this room. Thank you.
Yes, thanks. That's a good question, at the risk of becoming a very long answer. So first of all, our organization was founded based on a moment in time where youth were finally getting an opportunity to engage, but they also recognized that the landscape of youth organization was very fragmented. So they thought of how can we participate efficiently, also effectively, all being volunteers. So that's why they created the organizations that I'm now representing today, because there has to be a form of really effective representation and effective dialogue. And that's also why it's really important that we have this document being a coalition, consensus, based on all these dialogues that we have, because that's the only way we can really meaningfully engage based on this vision. So if you read it, and I would recommend it, especially given your interest, you see that there are a lot of, I wouldn't just say progressive, but also sustainable and just really visionary ideas on how we can change the systems that have created the situation that we're in right now. And then how we do that in practice. That's also being really frank about the fact that this is a mandate, that this is a vision carried and based on the consensus of a lot of different youth. And then it's just a process of reminding them again and again that this is a youth vision, this is the future, this is a way to get to a sustainable society. And at that point, I think nobody can really be against that message.
Thank you so much. And now we want to go to the final speaker before we are going to start the dialogue that Yuri was talking about. So I want to give the floor to Marco. He's from the negotiation hub and from the Chile Pavilion. He's a Chile Pavilion organizer in COP 26 and 27.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I'm happy to see young faces in the room. Well, and I've been thinking about the practices that exist to promote long-term thinking in policy spaces. And policy is about making change happen in the real world. And I think long-term thinking is about making change now, but for the future. And considering this, youth is already promoting long-term thinking in spaces like this, and in spaces where there's a lack of long-term thinking, like sometimes at the negotiations. And I'm glad that we are not in other meeting rooms where it's hard to speak with these words. So here I feel very comfortable to speak with all of you. as I was saying before, starting this special meeting with more freedom to speak here. So yeah, well, I'm Marco Yáñez from Chile, and I've been part of the Chilean delegation since COP26, after being selected in a youth program for young negotiators, of course. And this is a program that all delegations should have, because when you have young people in the delegations, definitely you speak in a more ambitious way. And I think now, even here at the SB, you need that ambition in all the meeting rooms. And yeah, every time you can see like sometimes there's no ambition at all. Yeah, and I've been working on the Santiago network for Lesson Damage, and where you can see how slow sometimes work is, the negotiations. And this is an urgent issue, such as loss and damage. And you know that people are waiting for assistance on this topic. You know that there are people there outside, and in the small island states, for example, waiting for us to discuss commas and dots, during hours. And it seems that not all the people at the room is aware of this situation. Also, we're here to talk about good policy making, and not only about a negative aspect, but sometimes I think it's important to speak with the truth, what is really happening here and also outside in the countries where people are definitely suffering. Yeah, so good government depends on good policy making. And yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about how or what the pandemic showed us, and how fast countries can move, and governments when they need to take decisions to achieve goals when they really need them. And this example that I'm talking about is to say that when leaders are aware of what's happening, they can actually move and get what is needed. And in this situation, of course, I think it's not happening too much regarding to the climate crisis. And I know that long-term thinking sometimes is really hard work to do, because it means to think about the future and it's a future that sometimes it's uncertain for current generations. I think I'm being too long. I don't know how. Okay, well, I think we're okay. So, well, in Chile we had a long-term thinking idea in the policy spaces, and because we wanted to have a climate change framework law, and this law wanted to have a clear goal, net zero by 2050. And to achieve this, we needed not only long-term thinking, but also strong climate change policy in the state, which means that this is going to go through different administrations in the government, despite the political colors. And well, yeah, according to the criteria that the UNFCCC has, Chile is highly vulnerable to climate change effects. In fact, they have, my country meets 7 of the 9 criteria. And well, in 2019, Chile became president of COP25. And at the beginning of 2020, we had this bill in the Congress for the climate change framework law. We had a public participation in the process, and the Minister for Environment received 3,700 public comments, giving legitimacy to this process. So since last year, we have a climate change framework law in Chile, and with a clear goal by 2050. Well, and now about challenges when it comes to long-term planning, thinking in the policy sphere. I think any serious attempt to improve policy making needs to look at what has already been tried, And we need to develop a process that is both resilient to the realities of the policymaking system and appropriate for meeting future challenges. And I think that the main challenge is to ask to ourselves, okay, long-term thinking means that we need to think about our future generations, of course, but how many generations are going to be able to live in this planet in the way we do now? So I think the challenge here is first to make sure that we're gonna to actually have new generations living in this planet, and that's where the focus of policy sphere should be. And new generations need to have the safe possibility to exist, so we can think about long-term planning. Okay, I'm gonna finish now, right now. And well, I think what is needed to promote long-term thinking on an international level and in the UN spaces, of course, clarity on goals and how to achieve them, but also we need to avoid these points. I'm gonna be very brief. Setting out an idealized process that is too distant from the realities of policymaking, or offering realistic ambitions for policy making, but not specifying how they will be achieved in practice. Therefore, sorry, we need goals, ideas, design, roles, and an effective mechanism for feedback and evaluation. If we want to give hope to youth, we need to show them that the people that need to do their job, they're actually doing it. If this happens, we know that new generations are not going to need to ask them to protect the planet, because we are going to be already adapted. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marco. Unfortunately, we're running really short on time, so if you have any questions for Marco, you can ask him afterwards. And we talked about, I want to thank all the speakers for your insight and your thoughts on the topic from your background, and the importance of youth engagement and long-term thinking in adaptation policy. And all the speakers talked about how important it is to engage youth in policy and to think about future generations when we make it. So today we want to showcase in what way you can engage youth or an audience like you. So I want to invite Adriana to moderate the next part of the event, the youth consultation.
Good morning, everybody. I'm very happy to see many familiar faces and friends from all over the world. My name is Adriana Valenzuela. I lead the Youth Leadership and Education Program at the Global Center on Adaptation. That is an international organization that works as a solution broker. We are based in the Netherlands, in the largest floating office of the world, as an example that climate resilient and climate resilient infrastructure is possible but also needed for all. And as part of our work, we have a different mechanisms because we completely agree that we need, first of all, a change about the narrative about young people. It means to move from youth as a vulnerable group, and we need to move to youth as agent of change. And we need intergenerational dialogue and intergenerational partnerships, but also solidarity and cooperation between young people from all over the world. And for that, we established and created the youth network, that currently Adaptation Network. Currently, there are members in 130 countries. Since last year, we started organizing the youth dialogues as an intergenerational platform that brings together young people and decision makers from all over the world. We have last year 6, and we finalized with a global dialogue in Rotterdam with young people from 50 countries. We continue this year. Yes, on Thursday, we have the Adaptation Youth Forum in Bonn that brought people together from 40 countries, and we have also exceptional speakers like the IPCC, the Deputy Mayor of Bonn, we have UNFCCC, the Convention of the Certification, to generate this intergenerational dialogue. Then what are we going to do? And why this consultation is important? We want to promote youth participation in different spaces, international spaces, and for that, thank you to all the partners for making this event possible, because your voices are important, but also at the national level. And we are going to design a guide about youth participation in the national adaptation plans, learning from other processes, and also encouraging governments to promote the participation in all the stages. Then with this, this publication will be available at the end of the year at COP28. We also will continue, we can have other programs. For instance, we will continue with the training that we have for young women on leadership. And also now we have a toolkit about youth leadership and adaptation available to all of you. It's available online. And what we want is to check that you use these materials and let us know if it is working and how we can produce other materials to enhance your work. We have here the members of the Youth Advisory Panel that also was established 2 years ago. We have 12 members from last year, and this year also 12 members providing advice, but also moving forward the adaptation agenda. And then I want to hand over to Manab. We have here Manab, we have also Natalia, we have Chema, we have Kathy, we have many members of the Youth Advisory Panel. And then Manab will be just leading this consultation to hear from you what are your good practices, but also challenges and needs. Over to you, Manab.
So thank you for being me here. And I would like, if people would move forward, so we have like a meaningful consultation and meaningful engagement with everyone. And before I start, I would like to give a brief introduction about myself. My name is Manav. I'm from India. I'm currently finishing my PhD on circular economy and climate change adaptation in Italy. And before that, I used to work with the independent evaluation unit of the Green Climate Fund in South Korea. So that's how my journey involved with others, youth members from all over the world. And thank you for your wonderful, wonderful insights. And before we move forward, I would just really request everyone to please come forward to take all the available spaces, so we have wonderful experience and consultation experiences with all. Yeah. I just need my... So I hope we all are settled, and I would just like to request for everyone to look at the screen, and we have 3 questions for you to answer. Just write it down, and we request that you write your countries so that we understand what are the challenges specific related to the country, and we can also allocate that to the geographical problems. So if you could please write it down, the 3 questions in front of you, and also the name of the country, not the name of yourself, but only the country that you're coming from.
Then the idea, yes. Then you have this paper, then the idea is that you can make 4 pieces of that. Then in one, you can put just write down before, the challenges that you face. In the other one, you can include methodologies, what works well, but also, for instance, if there is anything that really it doesn't work at all, that you have experience when working with young people as well. And then you will have the other 2 for good practices. And for the good practices, what will be important to put is the country, and very brief what this good practice is. And with these elements, then after that, the discussion will be open.
Yeah. So in case you have any questions, and in case anything is not clear, please let us know. And you have 5 minutes?
Yeah, we only have 20 minutes left for the side event, so maybe take 3-4 minutes and then we will discuss those.
So we are running out of
answers.
time, sorry, but yeah, you have 3-4 minutes, so let's. I think the room is full of young energy, so we can do it.
And I think it would be best, of course, to discuss all of the answers together. So it would be better to have the more time for the plenary than to focus on your individual answers. So please be as broad as possible, and then we can all learn from each other.
It was a nice handwriting for us to understand. Just for your knowledge, I have the young champion with me. So it's good that she has some free time.
Yeah, are you ready to do the plenary? No, not yet.
Are we ready? Yeah, yes, we are ready. How is it going?
I also think that the most important part, of course, for this session is to know what kind of methodologies and what kind of good practices are worth mentioning, because that's, of course, what we want to, pass along, of course. Like, if you have a good example within your own organization or within your own country, then I think that's worth mentioning, because then others can learn from you, and then youth participation internationally will increase or will become better. So I think that's the main focus, of course. So please focus on the best practices and the methodologies.
Is there anyone who who's ready, then I can maybe share one of the best practices and share it publicly. Anyone wants to volunteer? Anyone wants to take the lead? Maybe, yeah, you can.
Happy to, thank you. We each spoke about a mentorship program to encourage people to stay in the space and build meaningful relationships and then pass on that capacity in a way that's more than a one-off workshop.
Do we have one more active energy in the room? No? Oh yes, we have one more.
Yeah, sure. My name is Rebecca. I'm with WECF in the Netherlands. So I think one of the things is meeting young people where they are. So kind of explaining to them and mentoring them in, okay, what skills do you already have, what passions do you already have, and how does that link to climate action? So there's a lot of skill sets that they can use to foster that sort of action and saying, hey, maybe you are already involved in climate action and you might just not yet know it.
That's a very good example. So we have one more.
Yeah, I've seen, of recent, I've seen a lot of collaboration between young people and youth organizations. And I think that has been really helpful because it also has been encouraging best practices between these organizations that have been collaborating. And I think this is one of the ways that we could really see how we could foster the goal and the agenda that we have as far as climate adaptation is concerned. So collaboration has been really thriving so far.
So we have covered collaboration. Now we have one more. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Mert Kummer, WYCJ, World Street for Climate Justice. I think it's also very good to organize capacity building camps to invite young people in separate regions of the planet to include and talk about their own experiences with challenges with regards to adaptation, and then come together at like a central place to discuss these things. And to come back to what Yula just said, also like an executive training program that basically trains people to enter into the sphere and becoming the next leaders of well, various organizations. I think that will be a great opportunity to like take away the impediments and like lower the threshold of young people to act in future policy making. Thank you.
Oh yeah. So.
Hi, I'm Agnes and I'm with ActionAid, and in ActionAid there's these global platforms that are basically provide space for young people and young organizations to come and either just use the physical space if they need it, because often that can also be like a limitation, or provide resources, but also, for example, provide trainings and capacity building, and in quite an open way that it's like for a range of youth organizations working on, you know, not necessarily all very specifically climate justice, but related topics about governance or civic space. So in that way also bring different groups together that can learn from each other.
I think one thing that really helps is providing a service to your national government or for other groups that are looking to get stakeholder engagement on different types of policies, action plans, strategies. Because then when you do the outreach for the coalition building, all of a sudden you have so many groups of young people that you can go to for a holistic approach and strategic approach to make sure that you're advocating for meaningful youth engagement and the high ambition that we all want. So it's a service for both the government and it's a service to yourselves because of the coalition building aspect.
Thanks. Hi, Zan from the COP28 Presidency Youth Champion team. I think one thing I think is really important is embedding climate education and climate resilience into national curricula and education systems. We're very lucky that we've made it all the way here to an SB and to find this session, but for most young people, it's very, very difficult. And I actually think knowledge on these issues need to be fully embedded in education systems in every country in the world. And not only sort of the basic facts about climate resilience, but also, you know, how young people can actually be prepared locally in their communities, how they can take action and show leadership, introduction to what sort of resilience policy looks like at the local level. Personally, I think that's all things that every young person should be being taught in schools, because no community isn't going to have to, you know, have to enact climate resilience over the next coming decades.
That's a very good example. Do we have more? Yes.
Yeah, thank you. My name is sorry, Hilux. I'm from Cameroon. And I would like to give two recommendations. The first one is about peer-to-peer learning, because from a country where there's a lot of impact on climate change, but low involvement of young people into action. So there are few youths involved into spaces like this. I can say I'm privileged to be here because many young people do not have the opportunity. So if we go back to our countries, communities, we should encourage young people to go back and educate their peers so that they should also learn from what they are doing and also take impact initiative at their local level. And the next point that I would like to suggest is to create focal point groups within the different ministries. On Thursday, during the GCA forum, we had example of in Uganda, there are young youth parliamentarians who are present within the government and the different ministries, help and assist different government in decision-making processes, like taking advices and opinion from young people. If we copy such initiatives in different countries, it will go a long way in promoting young people participation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think we can take a few more.
Okay, yeah. So, oh, actually, would be very nice if you give details about your initiative as well.
Sure, thanks. I'm Max from Germany. I'm with the Plant-Based Treaty Initiative. And I think it's crucially important to provide help with mental health problems to young people, especially climate activists. For example, to deal with climate anxiety, burnout. I can really see that in my community, that especially young people are burning out so fast. They're just disappearing from meetings. They never come back. And yeah, I think that will get a lot worse in the future. So also to all of us, I think we need to take so much care of ourselves, and yeah, so we can be in this game as long as possible. And yeah, to end this on a more positive note, I'd like to invite all of you, if you want to get lunch, we have a food truck outside. You can get delicious plant-based hot dogs for free.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. You can also introduce that to, oh yeah, after that, yeah.
Maybe two more recommendations?
Yeah, so I just want to add on, was it Max? Yeah, to Max's point, and say that like climate justice and joy is so important, and like adding joy to this space, like having fun meetups, getting dinner, getting lunch with friends, like that's what keeps me coming back to this space. You sit in a negotiation room for 3 hours and it's like you want to bang your head against the wall because these adults don't know what they're doing. Just kidding. But yeah, the way to reset, like take that time to reset. Also encourage everyone tomorrow. It's a break day. If you can, don't look at your phone, your computer, like try to escape at least for a little bit of time, and yeah, take care of yourself. So that's my best practice for sure.
Thank you. Thank you all. Sorry, I'm almost crying a bit. I'm sorry. I was moved by your by your passion. Sorry. Just a good example from Sweden. I think it's good to build on existing processes and in evolving youth, and not constructing new sort of processes for that. So in Sweden, we have a system of recruiting youth delegates to our delegation, and they are recruited from an organization that collects the Swedish youth in a democratic way. So that would be my recommendation for a good practice, not to create new systems and ways to measure. We have one of them here today. You know Axel? Yeah, challenge. Education is challenge. I heard you mentioning climate anxiety. We have been measuring in Sweden the level of awareness, which is very, very high. The level of anxiety is also very, very high among young people. My thoughts on that would be not to leave that to young people to deal with, to continue working together over generations as best as we can. So thanks for inviting us to this with older age. Thank you.
Oh, thanks a lot. So I think this is the last we
Yes,
can take.
last but not least, of course. But yeah,
Yes.
of course, take the floor.
Thank you, everyone. This is me, Anupama Shahi. I'm from Nepal, and I'm so happy to be in this program and taking part in this program. So my suggestion is we can have international global network of youth to share experiences and have programs like this, different types of workshops or seminars in different parts of the world. So to engage youth and to exchange the good things about what they are doing in their country for climate. As we know that Nepal, it's very vulnerable to climate change. It is a very small country, but it is not for the global greenhouse gas emission. It contributes very less, but also it is very vulnerable. So I would like to request that everyone should get informed of what kind of program we are holding. So I think we have to build a good international network. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, guys. I think we could continue for more and more hours, but we can. Do you still want to say something?
Just thank you, everyone, for your wonderful insights. We just request everyone, would you mind, we have two colleagues, my colleague Aoife and Nicolo, would you mind handing your recommendations to him and her? And then we are probably going to the closing remarks. Thank you.
Yes, so thank you so much for all your energy, and I think we have heard a lot of nice stuff. So I just wanted to wrap up this session before we have some more closing remarks before we wrap up, but I just wanted to close this plenary. So we have heard a lot of nice initiatives, for example, the internship or an executive training for young people. We have heard summer camps. We have heard encourage local communities. We have heard about climate education. I think all these initiatives should be explored within your own national context and internationally to really embrace this youth participation initiative. So thank you all very much. And to close this session, I would like to invite Mark Haver to introduce his questionnaire list, I think it is, but he can explain it better than me. But he will close this session, and then I will give the floor to Kiki to wrap it all up.
Thank you so much, everyone, for participating in our consultation today and for listening to the different perspectives shared by our speakers. It is always an inspiring environment when we're able to collect the inputs of youth so that we can really determine the collective vision that we all want for ourselves, not the one that's going to be governed for us, but a future that's governed by us. And that's part of the mission of one of our partner organizations today, the Negotiation Hub. We're a think tank created to basically democratize access to capacity building resources for young observers and young negotiators. And we want to be able to understand what meaningful youth engagement looks like substantially. What are the examples? What are the best practices? What are the gaps? We need to identify these barriers and these solutions so that we can present them as data, as evidence points to the powers that be, to those people who have the power to basically be able to meter out that meaningful youth engagement, whether it's through the UNFCCC, whether it's through their national delegations, or whether it's through the COP presidency. And so I want to encourage you all to take out your phones and please scan this QR code using your phone camera. We have this survey specifically for SB 58. And we're hoping to be able to use this preliminary survey to help us map and understand the gaps, types of questions, and recommendations that we need to provide ahead of COP28. So that way we can continue building on these data and evidence points publicly. So that way we can continue this meaningful youth engagement campaign. So thank you again to all, and a big round of applause to our partner organizers. And
Yes.
a round of applause for the youth in the audience.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mark. And now I will give the floor to Kiki, and she will also introduce our last speaker from the COP28 presidency. So please, Kiki.
Yeah, thank you, Mark, for your words. And we want to invite Shema to very briefly say some words and to close this session. Where's the microphone? Oh, perfect.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. Good morning, everyone. My name is Shema Rashid from the UAE, from the COP28 negotiation team, and an ACE focal point for the UAE. So I'll make it very quick, just a closing remarks. As we draw the curtains on this remarkable event, I want to take a moment to address our incredible youth leaders who have brought endless energy, fresh perspective, and unwavering determination to the forefront of the climate movement. First off, allow me to reintroduce you to the Bonn Adaptation Action Agenda, objective that aims to promote youth participation in adaptation policy, engage young people in the design and implementation of the National Adaptation Plan, scale up adaptation finance, and provide adaptation education materials and capacity building to young people. Youth voices have resonated throughout this gathering, reminding us of the urgency and adaptation required to combat climate change. Your unwavering passion and knowledge have inspired us, and it is essential that we continue to amplify your voices as we march towards COP28. As stated by Professor Salim during the Adaptation Hub, COP28 could very well mark the end of an old era and the beginning of a new era. To the youth present here in the event alongside myself, we must ensure that we are heard. We must ensure that we are seen. Our unity is our strongest ally. Sure, we can hit the streets armed with our passion and determination, but let's not forget the wise words of Professor Salim. Let's communicate in a language that resonates with the decision makers and power breakers. Let's be strategic in how we express ourselves and make our voices heard effectively. Our ideas, innovation, solution, and unwavering commitment will be the driving force behind the change we seek and that we desperately need. Education and empowerment are crucial in nurturing the next generation of climate leaders. For the leaders in the room, you must commit in driving the tools and knowledge to the young in effort for them to be able to navigate the complexity of climate action. You must invest in their capacity building and mentorship possibility, ensuring that they are equipped to take the helm in the shaping the future, sustainable future.
Thank you so much. We're running out of time, so thank you so much for your final words. And I also want to give a special thanks to all the organizations that co-facilitated this event. Thanks to Global Center on Adaptation, Plan for Planet, Peace Boat, the Young Climate Movement, and the Negotiation Hub. And thank you all for participating in this site event.